Welcome back to Half the Battle. It's me, Daniel Levy, your host, and Shaq, your co-host. We're going to be talking UFC 239, Jon Jones versus Thiago Santos, and Shaq, it's going down this Saturday in Vegas. International Fight Week, the greatest of all time, Jon Jones, is defending his belt against a hungry challenger, and the greatest of all time, Amanda Nunes, is taking on a former champion.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good card. You know, those aren't the only two fights. You got a lot of former world champions on the card, legends on the card, Thiago Sanchez, Gilbert Melendez, Luke Rockhold. So it's going to be a good card from top to bottom.
Absolutely, man. I mean, you just said it right there. Thiago Sanchez, Gilbert Melendez, we both remember the epic war they had back in Houston, Texas, the night that Cain Velasquez fought JDS the third time. Now they're both on this card against somewhat up-and-comers. I mean, Chiesa, he won the Ultimate Fighter Tough 15, but at this point, he's on a Legends-killing tour. Just beat Condit, trying to take out Thiago Sanchez, and Gilbert Melendez taking on the young up-and-comer Arnold Allen. Going to be a hell of a night.
Yeah, it's we're gonna see if these two guys kind of weathered vets. Let's see how they go against these top prospects.
I'm very excited to see what happens, and let's get right down to business, man. Because first up in the women's bantamweight division, we got Pannie Kianzad. She's 11-4, and Julia Avila is 6-1. Currently, they got Julia Avila minus 220. The comeback on Pannie Kianzad is plus 180. Well, Shaq, Julia Avila impressed a lot of people on her regional scene footage, and now she's making that UFC debut. She's taking on the tough runner-up in Pannie Kianzad. Kianzad's taking this fight on short notice. Who do you think gets it done?
Yeah, Avila seems like a very aggressive puncher, and Kianzad seems like somewhat of a female journeywoman in a sense. She had a very good stretch, but then she lost like three of four. But she, picked herself back up, won a few fights on Tough, and, she got the call back to the UFC. So congratulations to her. She's taking this fight on short notice. These are one of the short notice spots where I'm not that particularly that keen on fading one side or the person coming in on short notice, just because I feel like Julia Avila, I don't want to say she has a misconception of what the fight game is, but she's just been in a lot of fights where the girls just aren't there to fight. She's been walking forward, just letting off all these punches go without the other opponent fighting back too much. So this is going to be her first real test. I think that she's probably going to be in better shape here, but I think the fight's going to play out very close. One of those, I think, even though the line's fairly wide, I feel like this fight's going to be coming down to the wire towards the end. I will pick Julia Avila just because she's probably in the better shape. She had the full camp. But I wouldn't count Pannie Kianzad out. Julia Avila, she's still got a lot to learn. She's a good puncher, but she definitely hasn't seen the high levels of the sport in comparison to Kianzad, who's been in there with the Chiesa. She beat Rose Clark. She's been in there with some other UFC fighters. So I'm going to take Avila, but I'm going to say by close decision.
Well, they both do have some experience because my girl Avila did beat Marion Renault in her MMA debut, but Renault was also 1-0 at the time. But it goes to show that Avila has been fighting for a while, and they signed her for a reason, man, because if you watch that regional footage, she goes out there and tries to take her opponents out. She goes out there with a certain aggression that not a lot of the women in that weight class are known for, and it actually kind of reminds me of, like, Jessica Andrade a couple years back when she was at bantamweight, just the way she charges forward with big hooks. Doesn't matter if you hit her with your return shot, she's going to keep eating it and go forward. And I really like that about Julia Avila. I think her aggression is going to take her a long way. Maybe not in this division, but in this sport, because she can eventually drop a weight class. And with Pannie Kianzad, she's decently well-rounded everywhere, but it seems like she doesn't really like being pressured. And that's what Julia Avila brings to the game. So as long as Avila doesn't get on top of her and get caught with an armbar, because Kianzad does have a very opportunistic armbar off her back, I think Julia Avila's pressure is going to be too much. I think she overwhelms Pannie Kianzad to an either lopsided decision, possibly even a TKO, man. I think you guys need to look out for Julia Avila. She brings something pretty awesome to the table for that weight class. Next up in the welterweight division, we got Ismail, the Austrian wonder boy, Naurdiev. He's 18-2, and Chance Rencountre is 13-3. Currently, they got Ismail, the Austrian wonder boy, Naurdiev, minus 525. The comeback on Chance Rencountre is plus 415. Well, Shaq, you got the very tough Chance Rencountre making his third UFC appearance, but now he's taking on a very highly touted prospect. Some people are even calling this guy a phenom in Ismail Naurdiev. How do you see them matching up?
Ismail Naurdiev, the Austrian wonder boy, man, this guy gets a lot of rave reviews from a lot of top UFC fighters. I asked Dustin Poirier about this guy, and he said, yeah, this guy's the real deal. So, Naurdiev...
My boy Dustin's like, you didn't know about the Austrian wonder boy?
It's Ismail, bro. He's a phenom. But, Rencountre, very tough guy, one of those Native Americans. He fights with a lot of spirit. He's got a very good single leg. I think he's a JUCO wrestler. Rencountre's a very tough guy. His fight with Kyle Stewart, Stewart took that fight on short notice, and Rencountre ran right over him and really quickly. And his fight against Bilal, man, he showed a lot of heart because, Bilal taught him that, gave him a very rude welcome to the UFC, just gave him that MMA clinic. And he hung in there for 3 rounds when, a lot of guys could have packed it in. But, I just think Naurdiev's better in every aspect. I think he's a guy you got to keep an eye out for. This is a spot where, there's not a lot of pressure on him, but, he's expected to come out here and run over Rencountre. And, it might necessarily be that, but I could see a 30-26 on a couple 10-8 rounds in there. Rencountre's a guy where in his local scene fights, he kind of struggles with some of these, what I like to call these workman fighters, these old vets, and he would kind of struggle with them. But I'll tell you what, Rencountre's cleaned up a lot of things since he moved out to Cali. He's been training with Phil Davis and them at Alliance, so he's cleaned up a lot of things. I think that he'll win fights, after this, but unfortunately, I just think Naurdiev's just too dynamic with the kicks, the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu. I think that he's gonna style on Chance Rencountre here for a lopsided decision.
Look, I like both these guys a lot. Rencountre proved a lot to me just in terms of his toughness. He's definitely a durable guy. Never been finished in his 16-fight MMA career. Obviously got the vet lesson against Bilal Muhammad, but since then he rebounded against Kyle Stewart, who was supposed to headline LFA against Jared Gooden. And man, Chance Rencountre finished him in the first round. And Ismail Naurdiev, obviously he had a lot of hype on the regional scene, but he makes that UFC debut on short notice against Michel Tractor Przerish. And one doesn't simply make their UFC debut on short notice against Michel Tractor Przerish. And not only did he make that debut on short notice, he went out there and arguably 30-26 the guy. And this is a kid where he is very flashy on the feet. Obviously, he can be technical, no doubt about it. His hands are up high, great footwork. But when it's time to spin, this guy throws some of the fastest spins you've ever seen. And I'm not just talking about elbows or back fists. I'm talking about kicks, too. He can knock people out cold, but he can also grapple, too. In that Przerish fight, Przerish took him down past his side control, and Ismail Naurdiev was actually reversing him. Now, I'm not saying that every single guy that gets on top of Naurdiev, that Naurdiev's just automatically going to, scramble up or reverse them or this or that. We do have to kind of point out that Michel Tractor Przerish was very badly rocked, 10 seconds prior to getting reversed on the mat. But still, the fact that he did reverse a guy like Tractor Przerish, who is that experienced of a black belt, that says a lot in my mind. And I really think that now they're grooming this guy. They see they have a serious talent on their hands. They're feeding him the right opponents, and I think he comes out here, and I'm not sure if he finishes him because Rencountre is a very durable guy, but I definitely think that he goes out there and outclasses him, and is just a faster, more dynamic fighter in there, so I'm going Ismail Naurdiev here. Next up in the middleweight division, we got Jack the Hammer Marshman. He's 23-8, and Edmen Golden Boy Shahbazyan is 9-0. Currently, they got Edmen Shahbazyan minus 650. The comeback on Jack Marshman is plus 475. Well, Shaq, a lot of people are saying that this line is kind of wide. And my question for you is, do you agree, or do you think that Edmen's going to come out here and have a minus 650 type performance on the veteran?
Well, Edmen generally wins a knockout but in less than a minute. He runs through most of his opponents except Darren Stewart. Darren Stewart has a lot of power, and, he wanted to fight safe. But the fact that a 21-year-old kid had the mental capacity to execute that game plan, shows me a lot. And before his fight with Charles Byrd, I was like, man, this kid, for 21 years old, is very advanced. He's very well coached. And, I see a lot of people shitting on his head coach, Edmen Taradian. But, guys, you got to understand, you can't count the whole Ronda Rousey thing against Edmen. Look, when you're getting money like that, he's got to change who he is. He's got to sell people that this chick can actually box, and which she can't. But, that's how they sell pay-per-views. That's how they.
Do you want him to get off the payroll or something?
You want him to admit that she can't box and that she's shit? Like
it'll cost him $1 million
exactly,
doing that.
Exactly. He's getting a purse out of that. He's getting a percentage of that purse, man. He's gonna tell you whatever they want to hear. So I wouldn't count. This guy's a very well trained fighter. he was brought up the right way. I think Edmen's done a great job with him. I think Jack Marshman's the type of guy where at this stage in his career, I feel like he's so weathered and done that he's just going to try to run away from Edmen with his back on the fence, kind of similar to how he did against Phillips. And Phillips honestly won that fight in my opinion. Of course, he didn't go out there and knock him out like you expected or wanted him to do. He was the underdog against Marshman, but, I feel like Marshman's just a guy that he's only got a puncher's chance, and, his puncher's chance really isn't that good. He's also very chinny, and Edmen, man, this guy throws with devastating intentions for a very, tall, skinny guy. And he was very well trained, man. I actually believe Edmen about this guy. So I think he's going to come out here and give Jack Marshman a tour of the octagon, whether it be in the wrestling, the striking. And I feel like eventually Jack Marshman will have had enough and fall victim to another prospect. So I got Edmen Shahbazyan by finish at some point.
Man, this kid, Edmen Shahbazyan, only 21 years old. I can't wait to see what his finished product is going to be like because, man, he's so talented. Obviously, when he came into the UFC, a lot of people talked about his boxing, and I know that a lot of his fights only lasted 30 seconds, so I wasn't really quite sure what the deal was, but goes in there on Contender Series, knocks the guy out right away, and he has that fight against Darren Stewart, and, man, Darren Stewart is a very tough out, as you know, my man, and Darren Stewart hits like an absolute truck. And there was a moment in that third round where Shahbazyan could have been like, I had a great first 2 rounds, but now this guy's teeing off on me. I don't have much left in the tank. Let's go home and come back and, be better another day because he's only 21 years old. I wouldn't have held it against him, but that's not what he did, man. He still gets the takedown in that third round after he's completely rocked. So I'm not saying that's a sign of a future world champion, but I'm saying that's a sign of a very, very bright prospect and a real fighter, not just an athletic specimen. This guy is very, very tough. And with Jack Marshman, a vet of the game, always been a fan, always comes to fight. But lately, I say always comes to fight. That fight against Phillips, he was running away. But then again, Phillips does hit like a truck, so it was kind of smart on Marshman's part, even though I did personally score for Phillips. But with this fight, I just think that Edmen Shahbazyan is going to dominate him, whether it's mixing in the takedowns, whether it's keeping him at bay on the feet. Bottom line, I see Edmen Shahbazyan going out there and making a statement against arguably the toughest fight of his career, even though in my opinion Darren Stewart was a tougher fight. Jack Marshman might be a bigger name, so I'm going Edmen Shahbazyan here via domination. Next up in the bantamweight division, we got Alejandro Turbo Perez. He's 21-7, and Yadong Song is 14-4. Currently, they got Yadong Song minus 225. The comeback on Alejandro Turbo Perez is plus 185. Well, my question here, Shaq, is can Alejandro Perez weasel Yadong Song?
Alejandro Perez was on quite the streak before his last fight against Cody Stamann, and it was really a case of the first 2 rounds he got outboxed, and he got outboxed quite handedly. His prior fights before that, he would have these little stretches where he'd get outboxed, a la against Andre Sukumtach, getting dropped 3 times. The Albert Morales fight, the fight against Eddie Wineland was very close. He got dropped in that fight as well. He had a very good performance against Yuri Alcantara and Matthew Lopez. Cody Stamann fight was just, his run came to an end because he fought a guy that was just a little more fundamental than him, a guy that's just better at the execution part of the game a little bit. And he fought a great fight, man. It was just the tactical errors, his weaseling, he got weaseled, that's pretty much what happened. So, and now you got, he's fighting Song Yadong, who definitely has not seen anything like an Alejandro Perez just quite yet in his UFC career. I mean, his 3 UFC opponents, the first 2, I don't need to really say much about that. He fought Condoré. That guy's a fucking joke. And
whenever he comes back, he's getting 10-unit faded.
Certinejo.
Certinejo finished John Lineker?
Lineker's out the UFC. But, Certinejo, that guy, he retired the very fight after. But, if you look at his progression down, he was a part of the first 10-7 round in the UFC. He was done. And then now you got Vince Morales, who took the fight in on a week's short notice. So you could say Song Yadong has had a very favorable UFC career and opponent. So this is a big step up just in terms of the tactical side of the game, because Alejandro Perez, though he definitely has some holes in his boxing, the guy comes to fight. He's got a lot of spirit. He's got very good cardio, and he stays focused for the most part. part, because to win those fights, those guys, a lot of those guys had better striking than him, you know what I'm saying? But guess what? He would beat him in the striking, he'd maneuver, he'd use his footwork, he'd, attack at the right time. So this is going to be a test mentally for Song Yadong. First of all, Song Yadong, the guy's age is a big fucking myth. I mean, the guy's like 27.
You mean he's not 18?
He's not 18 at all. I mean, if you go back and watch his local scene fights, his age is all over the place. 1 minute he's 19, 1 minute he's 22, then the next minute
he's 26.
He's 26. So this guy Song Yadong's a little bit of a mystery, but when you look at him skill-wise, he's very big. He's definitely a lot bigger than Alejandro. I would definitely say he's a better puncher than Alejandro, but I would just say he hasn't really solved the big puzzle at this stage yet, So I agree with the line. When I say agree with the line, I see the projection for Song Yadong. He definitely projects higher than Alejandro Perez at this stage in their careers. Alejandro has to win fights on outmaneuvering people, outthinking people. As where Song Yadong, he's got a lot of force to his punching. He's very big. He's a former featherweight. He's also very experienced. So I would say Song Yadong has all the makings to come out here and handle business. He does have 20-something fights. He does train at Team Alpha Male. This guy is coming in very prepared. We just need to see it. So this is going to be his first big test. I think he's gonna do it. I think he's gonna capitalize in the boxing. Alejandro Perez has some very bad habits lifting his chin up, when he's pulling back out of these exchanges. And Cody Stamann was able to capitalize. I think the next best puncher he's fighting is Song Yadong, and I think that Song Yadong will probably capitalize as well. But one thing I would say about Song is that I don't want to say that worries me, is I do have a speculation that he can be knocked out stiff. He has been knocked out stiff in the past. He has been KO'd before. But if you watch that Vince Morales fight, he was handling Vince, for 2 rounds. Vince is a very tough kid, but in that 3rd round, about the last 30 seconds, Vince hit him with the left hook, and Song was making faces, spitting his mouthpiece out, and we'll see what happens if he gets tested a little earlier on here, but I gotta go with Song. I just think he's too big, too physical, will move forward. Alejandro likes to back up a lot, makes a lot of mistakes in his boxing, but I'm not counting Alejandro out. I wouldn't be shocked if he done this, but, I don't think he's as live as some people think.
Look, Alejandro's a very tough guy. I respect him a lot. Obviously, his weaseling tactics are unbelievable, man, and we gave him so much credit because it's amazing to watch a guy get knocked down 3 times in the first round and then come back and win the decision. That's the kind of stuff that Alejandro used to be known for. And not just that fight against Sukumtut. What about the Wineland fight where he got dropped in that one? And not only did he win that decision, Shaq, he won the round in which he got dropped. You know what I'm saying? So much respect to the Mexican weasel, Alejandro Perez, man. I love that guy. But the thing here is that it's going to be kind of tough to weasel a guy like Yadong Song because Yadong Song doesn't really have, the lowest fight IQ in the history of the sport like Andre Sukumtut. Yadong Song isn't, 1 or 2 fights away from retirement like Eddie Wineland. I just think that Yadong Song kind of operates on a different frequency than Alejandro. He's a lot faster, a lot more crisp, and just has more output. With Alejandro, he just brings some intangibles to the table. Cody Stamann said, Cody Stamann's had about 18, 19, 20 pro fights. Cody Stamann said that Alejandro Perez is the strongest guy he's ever fought.
He also said that he greases. He said he could smell it.
He's a weasel, bro. Cody Stamann said he's the strongest guy he's ever fought. Also said he was a big greased up. Hey, those weasel tactics, you know what I'm saying? But look, bottom line, I just think that Yadong Song is gonna be operating at a different frequency than Alejandro. But much respect to my boy Turbo. I got Yadong Song here. Maybe knockout because Alejandro does get dropped a lot and Yadong does have a very good finishing instinct, but at the same time it is kind of hard to put a guy away like Alejandro Perez, unless your name is Patrick Williams. No, but I'm going to go Yadong Song here. Now next up in the strawweight division, we got Claudia Gadelha. She's 16-4, and Randa Markos is 9-6. Currently, they got Claudia Gadelha minus 235. The comeback on Randa Markos is plus 195. Well, Shaq, it's an interesting spot because for a long time, a lot of people called Claudia Gadelha the perennial number 1 contender. But as you know, man, now she's taking L's to people like Nina Ansaroff and hasn't been looking the same. So do you think she has enough to defend her spot here against Randa Markos?
This is an intriguing fight because, Claudia Gadelha is definitely deteriorating. Since she fought Joanna the second time, what has she really done? Courtney Casey, Carla, and Carolina, 3-2, I think. She lost to Ansaroff and Andrade. So she's been 3-2 since she fought for the title. And the fact that she lost to no offense to Androv, but the fact that she lost to one of the girls that used to be, outside the top 15 and was on the bottom half of the top 15 when they fought, just let you know of what's, coming down the line. This is a girl, Claudia, where she's looking for a lot of answers. I mean, first she was at Novo Niao, then she went out to Albuquerque and trained at some gym there. Even went to Jackson Wink a little bit. Then she left there and went to Performance Institute and Extreme Couture. And then she left there, and now she's with Mark Henry and them. So we'll see what Mark Henry and Ricardo can add to her game. My speculation is they're going to try to switch things up a little bit and really make her focus on the jiu-jitsu side of her game. Really, put an emphasis. I feel like, this is just a guess, I feel like they're going to try to kind of treat her like how Master Hoffa and them did with Dariush. Look, you don't have the chin to withstand these 15-minute wars anymore. You need to go to your bread and butter, your jiu-jitsu, you know what I'm saying? That's what's going to win you most of these fights. So I feel like that's the adjustment they're probably going to try to make coming into this Markos fight. And Markos is a girl where a few months, a year ago, she was on the chopping block almost. She didn't take that Marina Rodriguez fight. She would have got cut. She took that fight, went to a draw with her. And the thing with Markos is, when I'm talking about fate, when I think about possibly fading Claudia Gadelha, Fraudinha, you want a girl that really turns up in the late rounds. Because you know what happens, like I told you last week, I would pretty much tell you every week, if you push them Brazilians in the late rounds, I mean, look at Junior Albini. He was you push them in the late rounds and they fold. Look at Jussier last week. You push them in the late rounds and they fold. So you kind of want somebody that's got a little bit of a history of turning up. Not saying that it's not possible because if she's just completely gassed, anyone can do it. The thing with Markos is, I would kind of classify her. I would say her and Gadelha kind of got a lot of similarities, man. Because Markos is a wrestler. Her comfort zone is on top, and she's going to have to switch her style up completely in this fight because, in my opinion, the takedowns aren't going to be there in this fight. She's going to have to really become an elusive striker in this fight and try to land a lot of volume in them second and third rounds, or possibly capitalize on Gadelha's deteriorating chin. I mean, this girl got dropped by Carla Esparza, and so like I said, that chin is deteriorating, man. She's getting wobbled, and she could be at that state where anyone coming in here is gonna make her quit and make her look for ways out. My biggest concern with Markos is, I would also kind of classify Markos as someone that gasses out in the late rounds because, when you watch these fights against Alexa Grasso, Alexa actually won the first round in that fight, but, Markos came back in the second, but you could just see that Markos is just getting tired. Not only that fight, but what about the Marina Rodriguez fight? She comes out there with the strong first round, and then she's barely holding on. I mean, Marina's teeing off on her to a point where she's trying to grab the clinch, and she's looking real sloppy and bad, and, the Angela Hill fight ended up in a round, and that's a very solid win, definitely a performance we haven't seen. So that could be a sign in the right direction. She's been seeing a sports psychologist, so she could be making gains. She might start doing things that we have never seen her done before, and we're seeing Gadelha start to do things that losing to people that she hasn't, that you wouldn't think if you would have told me she would have lost to Androv 2 years ago, I would have been like, fucking
if you would have told me Claudia Gadelha would get dropped by Carla Esparza, I'd be like, dude, shut up.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So it's a very intriguing fight, and like I was getting back to how I said, I feel like they're gonna make an adjustment with make Gadelha go back to her takedowns. Is Markos has been taken down a lot, man. She got taken down by Juliana Lima, she got taken down by Alexa Grasso, she got taken down by Carla Esparza. She gets taken down a lot, and a lot of it's off when she's initiating the clinch, and then she'll get reversed because she's a little tired, man. She like I said, I feel like her and Gadelha kind of got a lot of similarities in terms of the gassing out in the late rounds. So, I'm actually going with Gadelha here. I think that she's going to get the takedowns. I think that I've seen Randa get taken down and swept too many times by lesser jiu-jitsu fighters than Claudia Gadelha. And I think that as long as Gadelha avoids too much stand-up exchanges, like I said, that chin is a liability at this stage. That's a 100% fact. So if you want to take that shot on plus 195, I mean, I don't blame you. I think you got a lot of value, but I just personally think that Randa's just going to fall just short. I think she's going to get taken down. I mean, for example, look at the Carla fight. When Carla did drop her, literally 30 seconds later, Gadelha's in mount pounding her, you know what I'm saying? So Gadelha still has that. I can't compare this fight to a Grasso Carolina situation because because Carolina doesn't have a dominant skill. Carolina just is a scrapper.
Tough.
Yeah, she's just a scrapper. She doesn't have a dominant skill that's proven to win fights. As where Gadelha, she knows that if she can get on top and win 2 of these rounds, she most likely win. So I think that she's probably going to come out here, probably try to pull a stunt at some point, but I think she's going to get a lot of takedowns. I think that she's going to, physically outweigh Markos. And the Androv fight, I will actually say, I'll go ahead and say that I feel like Androv has kind of separated herself from the Markoses and the
Gadelhas.
And the Gadelhas and the Carolinas and shit, because when you look at Androv's skill set, I know a lot of people are shitting on Claudia for that loss, but you got to understand Androv's got a very good solid Taekwondo point style, a disciplined point style, where she can, throw those teeps to the body, throw those calf kicks, keep moving and stay disciplined. I mean, Amanda Nunes and them got her right, man. And you saw the third round against Tatiana Suarez, man. She had Tatiana flailing all over the place.
She cost Tatiana her title shot.
She took away Tatiana's title shot. So I feel like Androv's a little bit above these other girls fighting, those like the names like the pack with Markos and all them. But I wouldn't be shocked if Markos got it. She seems like she's really confident these days. But I got to go with Gadelha. I think she's too stronger. I think she hits a little bit harder. I think she's going to capitalize in the jiu-jitsu. And I think she's going to scrape out a win here.
Yeah, this was one I was very intrigued in, because when I saw that plus 240 line on Randa Markos, I was like, oh shit, Claudia is definitely on a decline. She arguably lost her last 3 fights in a row. And basically, Claudia's always had a suspect gas tank. It's not because she's not out here running her miles again. It's just because she goes so damn hard in those first 2 rounds that she's got nothing left in that third.
Yeah, she's just a muscly Brazilian.
But man, she goes hard, bro. Like, fucking all those takedowns. And on the feet, man, I mean, look, she's just a better fighter than Randa Markos across the board, in my opinion. As far as technique, it's not even close. Like, if they put on the gi together, Claudia Gadelha is going to go out there and tap her out. If they put on the boxing gloves together, Claudia Gadelha is going to go out there and outbox Randa Markos. If they put the shin guards on, Claudia is going to outkick her. But the bottom line here is now they're fighting in MMA, and it's about, can Randa survive and then thrive in the later rounds? Because historically speaking, it's Randa that comes out hard in that first round as well, and then she kind of looks lost in that second and third round. So now it's going to be kind of interesting, because the extent to which Claudia historically gasses, it's something that's been documented for a very long time, man. And then she gets significant strike records on her face, like you saw in the second Joanna fight, in the Jessica Andrade fight. That was a very uncomfortable beating to watch. It was very brutal. In that third round, you just see the faces Claudia's making, the pool of blood. I'm just like, oh my God. And so, of course, her next fight, she goes out there and gets dropped by harmless Carla Esparza. Her chin is completely gone. But I got to give her a lot of credit for not just her toughness, but her technique, man. The fact that she got dropped against Carla Esparza, and then a couple seconds later she's attacking a mounted guillotine, she ends the round on top. I was like, okay, she's still got those skills, man. So I'm just so curious what's going to happen in this third round. If Claudia comes out here, dominates that first round, and then starts winning, the first half of the second round, then Randa starts to take over a little bit. Y'all better go to that live betting window and maybe put a little bet on Randa before the third round if it seems to be trending in that direction. But ultimately, I just think that Claudia Gadelha is better than Randa Markos, but will I put it past Randa to come out here and rise to the occasion, get this upset? Randa could be on the way up. Claudia could be on the way out. Anything's possible. You never know in this sport. But at the end of the day, I really do think that Claudia's going to get it done. I'm going to say split decision, because she probably does pull a stunt in that third round. And I'm not going to put too much stock in Randa finishing Angela Hill in the first round, because you know what? Carla Esparza also finished Angela Hill in the first round. Rose Namajunas also finished Angela Hill in the first round. So to me, finishing Angela Hill in the first round isn't a sign of, oh shit, like she's this new woman. It's just, oh, you were the third person to do that. Congrats. Try doing that.
I mean, look, when you got Angela Hill who's putting Randa's face on titty mannequins and shit like that, like she was talking too much shit, and it backfired.
Oh man, you know what happens when they start talking the excessive shit, especially in this day and age. But look, at the end of the day, I'm going Claudia Gadelha split decision. As far as betting value, right now I would pass. If you got Claudia under 2-1, that's good. If you got Randa plus 240 or better, that's good too. Current line, I'd pass. Next up in the bantamweight division, we got Marlon Chito Vera. He's 15-5, and Nohelin Hernandez is 10-2. Currently, they got Marlon Chito Vera minus 535. The comeback on Nohelin Hernandez is plus 385. Well, Shaq, Nohelin was initially supposed to fight Anthony Burchak in the LFA main event in about 2-3 weeks from now. So, man, he was expecting to cut that final bit of weight, two weeks out from now. And now he got the call like, hey, dude, it's actually, you got to make 35s by Friday. Now, not only do I have to ask you, do you think he'll make weight, but what kind of chance do you give him against the vet? The vet at this point, one of the most exciting fighters in the bantamweight division, Marlon Chito Vera.
Nohelin Hernandez is a good addition to the bantamweight division, a very tough guy. He's got some boxing matches on his resume. The guy comes to fight. That's 100% of the time. This guy definitely comes to fight. He's a scrapper, and he's looking to engage in an Ecuadorian versus Mexican-American battle. So this fight's going to be very brutal and bloody. And you get two Spaniards in there, kind of like Ige and Aguilar. You get a Hawaiian and a Mexican-American in there. Someone's going to get hurt. So I think this fight's going to play out very exciting. I think Nohelin Hernandez is going to come out guns blazing, swinging, looking for the knockout. But I think that that moment he's gonna drain himself down. Like you go from fighting on the local scene to all of a sudden fighting in T-Mobile Arena, International Fight Week. This guy was about to, Anthony Burchak might have been the biggest name on his card the other day. Now he's walking around and he's seeing John Jones and Holm and Thiago Santos and Ben Askren and Masvidal and fucking, you know what I'm saying, fucking, and Diego Sanchez, these motherfuckers that he's been watching on TV since he was a kid. So the moment's gonna be a lot for him. I think I'm expecting a big adrenaline dump when he's walking out there. Like I said, the kid might come out very hard early. He is a scrapper, but I think Chito Vera is getting better fight to fight. If this was a spot where the guy that's the big favorite, is kind of showing kind of similar like when Hernandez stepped in on short notice against Dariush. Benil was kind of looking like he was on the decline those previous two fights, and Hernandez came in and souped in, or a Casey Kinney coming in on short notice versus Ray Borg. Ray Borg just missed weight. Up a weight class. Ray Borg's done completely. So, and then those, or Cesar Ferrer. Although he's very talented, Cesar. Although he's very talented, Cesar, Highness is just a different animal. So I don't think Nohelin Hernandez falls in those lines. I think Chito Vera is too experienced at his age, getting better. I mean, just look at what this guy started off with. Like we said in the past, the Ecuadorian, the Peruvian, that Latin American scene, the Spain scene. I mean, look, it's very low level, and the fact that he's built himself up all the way into this position is very impressive. His skills have come a very long way. He's still developing, so I'm expecting to see even a better version of Chito. And let's just look at his last three fights. After the De Silva Andrade fight, in which he definitely let everyone down, but after that he bounced back against Luigi Burin, took care of him. I mean, put him in the ground. Guido Canetti, his former tough castmate, Guido told him his roommate. Guido told him he was gonna kill him, and he said that I love beating Marlon up. I used to do it all the time. and Marlon started off very low level, man. I mean, you remember the Davy Grant fights, and now he's coming out here, and then his third, he struggled in that first round against Guido. Guido likes to come out very hard early, and he put Guido away right away in the second round, man. Those knees were vicious. The jiu-jitsu was vicious. And then his fight against Frankie Saenz, a very tough out. Frankie's, beat Merab Divishvili, man. So Frankie comes to fight it. I mean, he put Frankie in the ground quickly, and the shots had some serious thing on him. I'm expecting an even better version of that. I think that at some point he will touch Nohelin on the chin. A guy who I've seen get dropped several times in the past. Very scrappy kid. He'll get back up. But in this particular case, when he gets dropped, just the moment will be too big. Marlon's probably going to get those hooks in, a triangle, a Kimura. I mean, the guy, Marlon, he's very vicious, man. When he comes after you, and he's looking at very cruel intentions, man. So I got Marlon Vera by stoppage victory, either submission or TKO.
Marlon Vera is someone who I like a lot, man, and back in the day when I used to tell you guys that this is a kid you need to look out for, people would laugh at me because they only saw, his fights with Davy Grant and Marco Psycho Beltran. They didn't really understand this guy was training in Ecuador with cab drivers, didn't have any pro fighters in his gym.
There's like 4 pro fighters in Ecuador.
You know what I'm saying? So then when he finally moved to the States, I mean, look, he got to the UFC training with cab drivers. Then he finally moves to the States, has a real camp behind him, and you see the improvements from a guy who lost to Davy Grant. Now he's going out there taking the third round off John Lineker and having some of the most exciting finishes in the UFC that we've seen lately. I mean, when Marlon Chito Vera gets you hurt and he starts to turn up, he turns up for real and he gets you out of there. And he can knock guys out, he can tap guys out, he can go the full 3-round distance. Marlon Chito Vera is as experienced as you can get right now for Nohelin Hernandez inside the UFC's octagon. And with Nohelin, look, I like the kid. He comes to fight for sure, has some pro boxing experience. But man, not only is he taking this on short notice, but some of the things I've noticed about his game, obviously he loves his boxing, no doubt about it, but man, I've seen him dropped at least 5 times that I can count. There might be more in some of his other fights, but I've counted him dropped 5 times. I've also seen him get choked out before. I just think that he might have some success in the early going. He does have some sharp hands, but eventually, man, Cheeto's going to find that chin, and when he does, it's going to be over shortly after, whether it's a knockout, whether it's a submission, whether it's dropping him to choking him out. It doesn't matter. I'm going Marlon Chito Vera here to get another win, another performance bonus worthy win, and make a statement and hopefully get a rebooking with Sean O'Malley. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got Gilbert El Nino Melendez. He's 22-7, and Arnold Almighty Allen is 14-1. Currently, they got Arnold Allen minus 345. The comeback on Gilbert Melendez is plus 285. Shaq, I remember when Gilbert Melendez was the Strikeforce lightweight champion, had the trilogy with Josh Thompson, made it to the UFC, got the title shot against Benson.
And what's he done since? Absolutely not.
Had the fight of the year with Thiago Sanchez, and since that point, it's all gone to shit. So my question here is, can he make a successful return at featherweight against one of the top prospects in the UFC's eyes, and Arnold Allen?
I think this is, pretty much a showcase fight for Almighty Allen. I mean, Almighty finally worked his way off the UK scene, and now this is his US debut. So, and this is I think the second or third time they've tried to book this fight. So it lets me know that they're really keen on Almighty embarrassing Gil, on TV. So
Sean and Nick see something in this matchup.
You know what I'm saying? So, Gilbert Melendez, we know he doesn't have the vitamins anymore. He's coming off the devastating leg beating against Jeremy Steven. That was
devastating leg beatings.
Yeah, 2 devastating leg beatings against Edson Barbosa and Jeremy Stevens. And his last win was against Thiago Sanchez, and that night, I remember who fought that night.
Let's put it this way. Tony Ferguson fought on the Facebook prelims. Do you understand what I'm saying?
This was Tony's comeback fight after 2 years off, you know what I'm saying? After he lost to MJ. So, I think Gilbert Melendez had a good run, but honestly, I think this is just for him to come in here and get his $200,000 plus his Reebok. Probably the last check he's going to make but he'll keep his job working for ESPN and things like that. But if they're expecting him to come in here and beat Almighty, I think they got another thing coming, man. I mean, Arnold is one of the top prospect to come out the UK in a long time, man. I think that this kid's too focused. He's not like I don't want to shit on Till right now. He's coming off 2 losses, but he's not a guy that's out here,
stealing taxi cabs in Spain.
Not even that, just, you don't see his coaches acting like they're the fucking new Kavanaugh or fucking, he's already twitching. He's already twitching there. You know what I'm saying? I believe we will fall and, all that bullshit. So Arnold's got a good team behind him at TriStar. Arnold's just super talented, man, in every position, A lot of people in the past used to shit on his takedown defense, but at the same time, his jiu-jitsu is so on point that he can get himself out of all those situations, man. Look at the fight with Amir Khani down there. I mean, Amir Khani is a serious scrambler, a serious world-class wrestler. I mean, just go to Wikipedia and look up Makwan's wrestling credentials. And I mean, Arnold Almighty they were scrambling hard for 3 rounds straight, busted him up on the feet. I mean, Almighty, I feel like this fight's pretty much going to come, Gilbert's going to come out here with a serious tie-up in the first round. When that doesn't work and they separate, Arnold will start to tee off with a straight left to his face, to his nose, the inside low kicks. And Gilbert will just start to question everything and either get finished or a 30-25, 26, and Arnold will finally get that big name win on his resume, his U.S. debut. I feel like I respect Gilbert Melendez, a part of some of the best fights, but he's past his prime. Like I said, I think this is just, the last $200K grab, and I feel like Almighty's going to come out here and do his thing by devastation, so.
Yeah, what's interesting about this fight? Obviously, a lot of people are talking about how Gilbert Melendez has a huge experience advantage, and yeah, he does have an experience advantage in terms of bigger fights. He has been in there with the more high-profile fighters throughout his career, no doubt about it, but what's one experience advantage that they didn't mention that actually goes in Arnold Allen's favor? How about let's talk about who's had 15-plus fights at this weight class? No one's mentioning that Gilbert Melendez has zero business at 145 pounds. And just because you were successful at 155 back in the day,
got no more.
Back when I was in high school, you know what I'm saying? Just because you were successful back then don't mean that you're about to come in here in 2019's featherweight division and start running shit and start fucking beating top prospects. Like, it just don't work like that. I mean, look, I love Gilbert Melendez. When I was in high school, I remember the Josh Thompson trilogy. You know what I'm saying? Well, I'm older than you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, look, the Strikeforce days, he was the fucking man. I still remember all the time back when people were talking about how, this guy's the number one lightweight, and then other people were like, no, Frankie Edgar's the number one lightweight, and this and that. And look, the bottom line here is that was a long-ass time ago, and I was always under the impression that, because I used to watch Strikeforce, that third fight between Gilbert and Josh Thompson, I saw a decline in that fight. Even that Jorge Masvidal fight, I know someone's going to be like, oh, he beat Jorge Masvidal, he's definitely beating Arnold Allen. It's like, it's not even the same Masvidal, you guys. It's the guy that fucking lost to Toby Amada, you know what I'm saying? But bottom line here is, those days were long gone, and Gilbert hasn't evolved. It's the same thing. Stands so heavy on that lead leg, likes to throw pocket combinations. Look, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu for sure, but when's the last time he took anything down? You know what I'm saying? And I just think this is going to be a very, very bad fight for Gil Melendez. I think Arnold Allen is a master at controlling the distance. You saw that fight with Rinaldi. Rinaldi was coming off the best win of his career against Jason Knight, where he 30-26'd him. Very next fight, Allen embarrassed him to a point where the UFC cut Rinaldi off one loss. That's how bad Rinaldi got embarrassed. Now, yeah, Rinaldi and Gil different, different this, different that, but the bottom line is, look at how he controlled that distance. From a guy who was getting criticized for his takedown defense, all of a sudden, he fights a wrestler who just put on a serious show the fight prior, doesn't get taken down even once. So I just think that Arnold is operating on a different frequency. And then you talk about the striking, and yeah, we can look at Fight Metric, and it says that Gilbert lands more strikes per minute. But so what, man? At this distance, the more effective shots are going to be landed by Arnold Allen. And we can also talk about how, well, Allen doesn't really throw too many kicks, and the last two guys have just been kicking him. Listen to me. When Arnold Allen was on top of Jordan Rinaldi and he started kicking him, I saw some very fucking good Muay Thai technique when he was on top of Ronaldo. You just didn't have to do that at any other point. But when he decided, I was like, oh shit, this guy does have some Muay Thai in his back pocket. And when you got a coach like Faraz Zahabi who's breaking down that film in detail, they saw that weakness. You know that they're adding more kicks to this specific game plan. And I think Gilbert Melendez will be neutralized again. He's very tough. He's got that Mexican-American heart, so I don't think he'll get finished necessarily. But Arnold Allen's about to put on a show here, so I'm going Arnold Allen via lopsided unanimous decision win. Main card time. Next up in the welterweight division, we got Michael Maverick Chiesa. He's 14-4, and Diego Nightmare Sanchez is 29-11. Currently, they got Michael Maverick Chiesa minus 355. The comeback on Diego Nightmare Sanchez is plus 295. Well, my question here is, obviously, Michael Chiesa, you just dominated Carlos Condit. Pretty done, it turns out, man. So the question here is Michael going to come out here and do that to Diego Sanchez as well?
I had a misconception of that fight. I was under the impression that Carlos just came out and pretty much gave it to him. That really wasn't the case. It wasn't like he didn't smack Chiesa a couple times. I mean, he definitely cracked him a couple of times. It's just that Chiesa's, new skills are a little bit more activated at 170 pounds. Look, he got completely washed out at 155. He moved up at the right time. That was a good move for Chiesa. He was the former Ultimate Fighter winner. He had the loss to Kevin Lee, which was off a very big layoff after a back surgery. Then he comes back after Kevin Lee, he gets into the bus accident with Conor McGregor. That fight gets postponed. Then he comes back, looks like death on the scales. And he moved up to 170, and that possibly could be the best move. Because if he would have stayed at 155s, those guys, his style probably wouldn't have meshed well with the current 155ers now. These 155ers coming up now are just different breeds of animals, man. So Chiesa made the right move going up to 170. I feel like Chiesa at 155 was kind of a guy that kind of had to manipulate guys into using a little more energy. He was kind of going to have to not necessarily trick guys, but kind of like the Dariush fight. You got Dariush coming out there bombing off on him early, but he's getting tired. Eventually, Chiesa takes him down, gets his back, just makes him work. Chiesa's stand-up has always kind of been in question as well. Definitely isn't known for his punches, but I'll tell you what, it's progressively getting better. He's getting a 2. The 2's coming. It's coming, man. It's coming. That 2's getting better. Chiesa, at this stage, you're going to start seeing a lot better version of him. I feel like, he's a lot. I mean, he just looked way different. I mean, you go and look at him again, I pulled him up side by side. So you go in there, you look at him against Anthony Pettis, that last fight at 155. I mean, the guy was so mentally cloudy. He was, firstly, he was up in Pettis' face telling him, you're about to go to Bellator. Then he was telling him, I mean, that's what happens when you suck your body out, especially guys like him that are fucking huge. Like, you suck your body out. He's starting his cuts out from 195 and shit, too. So, you suck your body out that much. And, he goes in there mentally cloudy. He runs himself into the ground real quick against Pettis. He took him down like 3-4 times. It's just when they got back out in space, he literally had nothing to, nothing sustainable to threaten Pettis, And I feel like at 170, man, that completely changed because in his previous fights on 155, you get back out in space with Chiesa, you might start to tee off on him a little bit until you can get another takedown. At 170, man, the guy just seemed way calm, and he just seemed like a completely different guy, man. And that's what you start to see with some of these guys that, especially like him, who, I've always thought for a while that 155 he would end up growing out of. So, now he's got this fight with Thiago Sanchez. People are saying Diego's live, and, the number's very enticing, but also I feel like this is a similar situation at JDS last week with Francis. He's coming off a couple wins, but the guy's not back. Let's be honest here. He's not a beneficiary. He was the underdog in those two fights, but he fought Craig White and fucking Mickey Gall. Two guys. One guy, Craig White, has no business being in the UFC. He's only in the UFC because they needed someone for Neil to beat up on short notice. So that guy, for facts, that guy should not be in the UFC. And I mean, Craig White, you go back and watch his previous fights, I mean, that guy's a fucking joke. Like I said, no business being in the UFC. And Mickey Gall, I don't know how many times I have to shit on him. I mean, I've told you guys a year and some change ago that the guy's the biggest.
Look, Shaq told you to put 10 units on Randy Brown.
I told you to put 10 units on Randy. I was like, man, if Randy loses to this fucking guy who has you got to earn your spot into the UFC, man. These guys, Craig White and these guys. So Diego Sanchez has definitely been going out here and handling them, but those guys aren't real fighters. Those guys aren't real UFC fighters. Mickey thinks the UFC cage is a Naga match, and fucking and Craig White's a fucking.
Craig White's trying to kiss guys at weigh-ins.
And Craig White's an investment banker. So, he kissed them on weigh-ins. So I feel like this whole Diego being back thing is a little inflated. I think that honestly, I feel like this fight's probably going to resort back to how his previous fights were going. Diego's a guy where in these last two fights, he's just been taking the guys down. He weathered a little storm from Mickey, but Mickey ain't a real fighter. Mickey came out there and just fucking thought he was going to run him over. Like, he's not a real fighter. A real fighter would have some sense of, like a guy that's beaten Trinaldo, Iakenta, Vic, Benil, you know what I'm saying? A real fighter would know, hey, look, I know the guy's a little old, but, it's going to be a tough fight, you know what I'm saying? So I think Diego Sanchez, at this stage in his career, he's a punching bag. I mean, you get this guy out in space, every strike you throw is going to land. He's a very tough guy, but his striking is just not very good, man. He's got big leaping attempts to come in on the inside, and he's going to have to leap in a lot to get to Chiesa, a 6'1" guy. And like I said, I feel like Chiesa's striking you're going to see it getting a lot better at this stage in his career, especially at 170s, when he doesn't have to suck out that extra 15 pounds. I'm happy Diego left Jackson Wink. That was definitely a good move. I can't say it was definitely a good move for his long-term picture because, honestly, like I said, I feel like his career got extended just because, he had the little beef with these two fucking pussies that, you know what I'm saying, that really don't have any business being here. So, honestly, I think Chiesa is going to come out here. I can't necessarily say he's going to finish Diego, but I think he's going to get a chance to work on all his skills here, give him a tour of the octagon. Diego's a very tough guy to out-grapple. He's never been submitted, but I don't think, just because he's never been submitted that it can't happen. I mean, Chiesa tapped out Dariush, you know what I'm saying? So that proves that myth right there. So I think Chiesa's going to come out here, work his hands, his long rangy kicks. I feel like I said, you're going to see a better version, and I think he's just going to kind of give Diego a tour, maybe a hip toss here and there. I think he will take him down too. I think that he's just going to be younger, fresher, respond to the damage a little bit more, and you're going to see Diego waste a lot of time trying to take. I mean, Diego's kind of a tie-up guy, He likes to come out here and put his head in between guys' legs. And
Askren's the guy that likes to do that.
But that's his style. He likes to take guys down and get on top. But unfortunately, when you're not fighting Craig White and Mickey Gall, that's probably not going to be the case here. So I got to go with Chiesa. I'm going to go with 30-26 victory.
Yeah, look, it's interesting to me because obviously Chiesa is known for manhandling these guys on the ground, and not too many people do that to Thiago Santos, who's also known for the same thing. What's interesting to me here is, from a game plan perspective, is Chiesa actually going to come out here and decide, man, maybe this is a good fight for me to come out here and test my stand-up, because Thiago Santos has historically, not historically since back in the day, tough one, but historically in the last couple of years, has kind of had a suspect chin. I mean, look, this guy won TUF 1. He won the first ever Ultimate Fighter. He's had an amazing career. The fact that he's still competing at this level against a guy like Chiesa is unbelievable. Much respect to Thiago Santos. What a beast. And also, he came through for me big against Mickey Gall, but that's Mickey Gall, and prior to that was fucking Craig White. You understand what I'm saying here?
Yeah, so thanks for the plus 220, though.
I appreciate it, Diego. You're the man. I'll have to buy you a drink for that. But as far as this one, man, I have to go Chiesa here. I just think the size is going to be too much. He absolutely is a different man at 70. That fight against Perez was a complete joke the way he looked out there. But then the next one against Condit, completely different guy. I think he's trending in the right direction. I'm going to go Chiesa here. Next up in the light heavyweight division, we got Luke Rockhold. He's 16-4, and Jan Blachowicz is 23-8. Currently, they got Luke Rockhold minus 230. The comeback on Jan Blachowicz is plus 190. So, Shaq, we just talked about how Michael Chiesa looked like a new man with 15 extra pounds. So now my question is Luke Rockhold going to look like a new man with 20 extra pounds?
Yeah, it's a big question, man, because, we have seen guys like Maheda Santos, Anthony Smith go. I mean, those guys probably weigh the same as Luke, cutting from 220, getting down to 185s. And, at times when I look at those two, I'd be like, man, how could that body ever weigh anything? You know what I'm saying? So this might be Luke's a big guy, man. I just watched all his fights recently. So, Luke, man, I would say Luke is a guy that very talented in terms of just his presence. He's got a very big presence about him. And at 185, he's definitely, bigger than a lot of his opponents. One thing I would say that a lot of people thought, Luke is a former UFC champion. And he beat Chris Weidman for that belt. I actually watched that fight yesterday. And man, that fight was a good representation of, just because you got one guy in championship trunks, you got Rockhold, that doesn't mean that those are the two best guys in the division,
Back then they were.
Well, see, when I was watching that fight, I was just saying to myself the entire time, if either two of these guys were fighting anyone better, they'd be knocked stiff.
Like Yoel.
And they did fight people better the next fights, and they did get knocked out stiff. So, you know what I'm saying? So, when I was watching that fight, I just pretty much saw the start of the deterioration of Weidman. And the start of the deterioration of Weidman was coming from the Machida fight, where he looked like shit and he was getting teed off on in the late rounds there. And then his next fight, he fought Vitor Belfort. He looked like shit there. And then he fought Rockhold, and he looked like shit. So it was kind of a progression down. And what's his record since?
1-5.
Exactly.
With 5 knockout losses.
And what's Rockhold's record since? 1-2 in the last 3 years. So, like I said, when I was watching that fight, my mindset was, man, if either two of these guys were fighting anyone better, they would be knocked stiff. So, in that fight, Weidman came out there, took him down early right away, kind of not necessarily manhandled him that first round, but, he just took him down. And, after that initial grappling stage, Weidman was so tired, and Weidman tricked everyone into thinking that he could box against Jacare for those first 2 rounds, and they thought Jacare was a good striker. And then Jack the Joker came out there and fucking put a clinic on his ass. But those were not, in the real honesty of the game at the time, those were not the two best guys in the world. I just feel like, Weidman was the champ, and, Rockhold was the pretty boy that they were going to, give the title.
So how does he match up with Blachowicz?
But yeah, I'm getting to that. So, I feel like Rockhold's skills were, a little bit inflated. I feel like, yeah, he's got a solid left kick at range. Definitely his boxing, we know it's a big liability, and he's one of those guys where it's always going to be a liability, because if you watch this guy's fights, this guy he's one of those guys that he just likes to to fight with his left and his right hand down. I mean, that's just the facts. So Blachowicz is a guy where, ideally when you want a guy to beat Rockhold, you want someone that's going to be willing to charge in and touch that chin. But Blachowicz is kind of a rangy striker too, man. He likes to throw his body kicks as well. He likes to jab a lot. He's more of a Euro style. But, in the last 2 years, Blachowicz, he's 4-1. He's fought more relevant guys at 205 than Luke Rockhold. The 20 extra pounds, could it help Luke Rockhold out? Yeah, there's a chance. I mean, there's a chance. And I do think overall he's probably better than Blachowicz. It's just, if anything does happen to Luke Rockhold, in terms of his chin, he's not the type of guy to bounce back.
That's for
if
sure.
he gets dropped, it's over. That's it. He has to keep it together the entire time or take him down and finish him. Because if any type of stumble, it's over. He ain't recovering back. This guy, when he gets dropped, that's it. So, that's why I couldn't possibly play him at a line like -230. Like I said, I do think he has better overall skills than Blachowicz. But Blachowicz is a guy where I feel like he can kind of be misconstrued because he's a guy where, we know as Jan 1.0 where he was losing to struggling with Igor the Duke and Pat Cummins and putting his hands on his knees in all his fights. That's why I faded him against Devin Clark. I was like, this guy's putting his hands on his knees in the middle of fights. But in the last 2 years, it seems like he's figured out some of his problems.
His new doctor is amazing.
Yeah, his body looks completely different. He's definitely got a new doctor. We told you to watch out. Alan's got a new doctor, but his streak came in. But his fight with Maheda Santos, I truly believe that he just ran into a guy that's achieving new levels at a new weight class, kind of similar to, Smith and some of these other guys. So, I feel like Luke Rockhold is the better fighter, but from a betting perspective, it will 100% has to be Blachowicz or pass because, like I said, if anything happens with this guy's chin in this fight, it's over. You know what I'm saying? Blachowicz could be winning. Luke could be winning, blasting him with the left kick. But I actually don't think he's going to get off on them left kicks like how he does in a lot of his fights because Blachowicz is very knowledgeable at range, man. Nothing's very flashy, but the guy just knows his basics very well. And another thing is, I wouldn't be shocked if Blachowicz took him down. Luke actually gets taken down in a lot of his fights, but Branch took him down. But look, Luke Rockhold's stock is not going up. It's going down. Former champion, and like I said, that wasn't a title fight where I was impressed. And, after that, he got knocked out by Michael Bisping. Michael Bisping, kind of just timed the counter, and he was walking into that counter he was actually touching him the entire time. And then after that, the fight against David Branch, I'm not going to put that much emphasis on him getting wobbled because it was coming against a guy that had put too much emotion into talking shit before the fight, a guy that put too much emotion into all this shit, and he's never been at this stage before in his entire career, and he got welcomed to the big league. So props to Luke for doing that. And then the Yoel fight, it was more so Yoel kind of likes to sit back and not throw. He literally took the first round. We've seen him do that multiple times, and I truly believe if he would have committed to coming forward early, he probably would have knocked him out sooner. So it's going to be an interesting fight. Like I said, I feel like Luke's the better fighter, so I'm gonna pick him. But from a betting perspective, it's Blachowicz or pass because Luke has a hard time keeping it together for 15 minutes. His boxing's a big liability, and it's just something that he's never learned. I think that he's a guy that he thinks that we've seen him on YouTube boxing in Mayweather's gym, and he thinks he's a good boxer. But the guy just consistently drops his right hand, consistently walks into exchanges with his chin in the air. But I do think he's a better fighter than Blachowicz, but plus 200 against a guy who's 1-2 in the last 3 years, who's on a decline. But like I said, he got the 20 pounds, so I'm going to sit back and watch, see how the 20 pounds affect him. But, him in his particular case, I'm not sure if the 20 pounds are going to do him favor because now he's fighting big, giant motherfuckers, and one of these shots land on his chin. I'm telling you, he ain't recovering.
The thing is, now he's one of these giant motherfuckers because we see these guys look better after 10 pounds. We see them look better after 15 pounds, but 20 pounds, that's got to be a world of difference for a guy like Luke Rockhold. He had to kill himself to make 85s, and obviously, he said he couldn't perform, man. And now at 205, one thing I do like about Blachowicz in this fight is that he does kind of run in and charge some guys, but man, if you look at the stats, besides the body kick KOs, which are very, very powerful, he definitely folded Latifi up in that first round with a kick. Man, he ain't really knocked anything out with his hand since 2010, so not saying it can't happen here. Luke is extremely chinny, and I do think he'll be more durable with 20 pounds, but to sit here and act like he was only getting knocked out because it was at 85s is total bullshit. I mean,
no, it's because his hands are down.
I mean, the guy was definitely eating those shots. And the thing is, yeah, maybe the Yoel one, Yoel does hit like a truck. Maybe that was towards the end of, when the weight cut was getting really rough. But what about those KOs he took early in his career back when he made the weight fine?
Against Tony
Rubicala.
Rubicala.
So Luke definitely has a chin liability. There's no questions asked there. But as far as Blachowicz, I mean, I just feel like, when you're talking about the top 10 or top 15 at light heavyweight, it's going to work out. But, around the top 8, I just think that he's kind of too basic, too slow, too stiff for Luke Rockhold, man. I think Rockhold is going to have a good light heavyweight debut here, man. He's going to be able to take him down. We've seen Blachowicz get taken down many times, whether it's Alexander Gustafsson, whether it's Pat Cummins. But the thing is, when Luke Rockhold gets on top of guys, historically speaking, it used to be like Rockhold gets on top one time, he's going to land so much damage that by the time you get up, you're going to be like the walking mummy Lyoto Machida. You're going to be throwing spinning back kicks that, uncharacteristic spinning back kicks like Weidman. Like, you're going to do some shit where you're so fucked up that you don't fight like yourself. So I'm very curious to see if Luke Rockhold can bring that back, because I remember how scary it used to be when that guy would get on top of dudes at 185. So 20 extra pounds, let's see what you got, man. So I do agree at minus 230 I would pass, but for everyone that got in under minus 2 to 1, I think you're on the right side here. So I'm going Rockhold here, and probably a pretty dominant win as well. We'll see. Welterweight division, the featured bout. We got Ben Askren, he's 19-0, and Jorge Gamebred Masvidal is 33-13. Currently, they got Ben Askren minus 225. The comeback on Jorge Masvidal is plus 185. Well, Jorge is one of my all-time favorite fighters. True OG of the game. I remember the first time I ever watched him fight was against Paul Daly in Shark Fights. I was a hardcore Paul Daly fan, especially when he got kicked out the UFC. So I was like, oh, Paul Daly's fighting again. He's fighting this dude, Jorge Masvidal. And I'll tell you what, Jorge Masvidal, he put on such a tough fight. I was like, damn, I'm a fan of this guy too. Back then, Paul Daly would touch guys one time and they'd go out cold. So the fact that Jorge went to decision with him, it was like, whoa, this guy is so tough. And then I watched all his fights after that, like, the Gil fight and the fucking, what's that guy he destroyed? KJ Nunes, Justin Wilcox, all these guys. So I've been a Jorge fan for a long time. Now my question here is, despite me being a fan of his, can a guy with 13 losses defeat Ben Askren?
This is a lot of fans are gonna have their hearts in this one. Askren, he's a guy where before his last fight against Robbie, I kind of came to the conclusion that if this guy gets on top, round's over. I mean, when I seen him do Nikolai Alexakin like that, I mean, Alexakin looked like he fucking had never been in a wrestling class in his life. He made Alexakin look like a fucking newbie, and that's straight up.
Alexakin's a top prospect.
Yeah. So, fucking, I remember what he did to Douglas and Koreshkov back in the day, 100%. I feel like Ben had kind of retired before the Robbie fight, so he kind of, looked like shit out in space. And he looks like shit out in space every fight. I mean, look at the Luis Santos fight. I mean, he gets busted up out in space. Everyone busts him up in space, you know what I'm saying? But the thing is, can you stuff a single leg? And not just one single leg, a chain of single legs, a switch from single leg to double to you know what I'm saying? Askren, look, I think that the guy is super one-dimensional, but in these particular fights, up until he gets to the Covingtons and the Usmans and the Ponzinibbio's of the world like that, I feel like he I don't want to say smooth sailing, but he's going to be able to rely on that single. As long as he can get his hands clasped, he's going to take George down. We've seen George get taken down by Ben Henderson, Lorenz Larkin, Ross Pearson, Damian Maia. I mean, if you want to see him get manhandled by Covington, just type in George Kobe wrestling. I mean, Kobe takes him down whenever he wants to. So, I like George. He's going to have to go to Ben's body and get him to make a mistake and actually knock him out stiff. And he is coming off a stiff KO his last fight. But, Darren Till's head was not in the right spot.
Darren Till's not a wrestler.
Darren Till's not a wrestler. Yeah, I got to go with Askren here. I think the wrestling's just too dominant. I think that he's one of those guys where, like I said, he gets on top, rounds over. And I mean, I like George. I actually think that, it could be lined a little wider, to be honest. I feel like they could have been at minus 2.5, maybe even minus 2.75, Like, when you got a single leg like that, look, I just know in my history, guys like Covington and Usman, look, what do they do in most of their fights, and it gets them pretty much out of every situation? They grab a single, you know what I'm saying? When you got those high level wrestlers like that, and Askren's more higher level than both of them, I think that he's going to be able to get those single legs and control them on the mat. I'm sure George will work his way back up a couple of times, but Ben can do that shit all day, man. So I'm going to go with Ben Askren by 30-27. And it's going to be a shitty fight, and he ain't going to get a title shot there.
Look, man, it's one of those situations where, yeah, we can talk about first L time, and it wouldn't surprise me, at all. Nothing surprises me in this game. But, man, Ben Askren is so dominant in that one skill that it's really just hard for people to deal with. And Jorge Masvidal, one of my all-time favorite fighters. I love the guy. I think on the feet at space, he's definitely going to bust up Askren, but tons of people bust up Askren. And the thing is, when Askren gets on top of you, I was actually talking to my professor, Guy Curry, about this because, he's like best friends with Douglas Lima. They went to high school together, and Lima told him these words about Ben Askren. He basically said, like, Askren would tie him up against the fence, and Lima would be like, this guy ain't that strong at all. And then all of a sudden, but I can't move. You know what I mean? And then Askren would get on top of him, and Lima would be like, oh, all right, we'll get my butterfly hooks in. We'll start working. We know what to do here. We're a black belt, but I can't move. I can't do anything. So I just think Ben Askren, despite the dad bod, despite, he says some shit that, you might rub you a certain way. Even though I kind of think he's low-key funny. Even though he's not the kind of guy I'd hang out with. I'd rather hang out with Masvidal. Like, Askren's pretty damn funny. But as far as the stylistic matchup, because that's what we got to get down to, I've just seen bigger men manhandle Jorge Masvidal before. And, a lot of people were watching the Till fight to get ready for this. What the fuck's the Till fight going to tell you about this Ben Askren fight? I only watched one fight, and that's the Maya fight, because that's what happens when he fights a one-dimensional guy who's an expert at that one dimension. And, there were times when he was scrambling, able to stuff the takedowns, but eventually, man, whether it's the fact that Damon lifted that single leg up in the air and threw him against the wall, whether it was, eventually got that double leg, took his back. As soon as this becomes sticky like glue and he just gets a hold of him.
They really had to wrestle.
Because Jorge might be able to stuff the first few, and it might be like, yes, Jorge, and he's busting him up with kicks. Yes, Jorge, a nice uppercut. But eventually, around that 3-minute mark, what's going to happen then? Can you still fend them off, with 2 minutes left in the round? And it's just hard for me to say. So, when I'm sitting, at my friend's movie theater watching it, I'm going to be going, let's go, Jorge. Come on, George. I'm going to be rooting for him the whole time. But my official pick is Ben Askren. Co-main event of the evening in the bantamweight division, we got the defending champion. We got the champ, the women's GOAT, Amanda Lioness Nunes. She's 17-4. And Holly, the preacher's daughter, Holm, is 12-4. Well, Shaq, currently they got Amanda Nunes minus 380. The comeback on Holly Holm is plus 315. Is Holly just going to come out here and lose another title fight, which she is known for?
I like Holly. She's
preacher's daughter.
Yeah, she ain't so godly after all. But Holly's a nice girl, man. I feel like Holly's the same thing, man. She's a typical Jackson Wink fighter that really hasn't evolved that much. And, hearing from Thiago Santos of what he was basically saying, what was going down, I mean, that's why she throws the same combos, moves the same way, and, that's why she has gotten the results that she's gotten. When you really look at Holly's wins, you want me to go ahead and reel them off? Marion Renault, she in the top 10, I'm not sure. Megan Anderson, one of the biggest frauds to hit the women's divisions in years. Then we're talking Ronda Rousey, who was a complete fraud the entire time. It just had to.
She was the Hoist Gracie.
Yeah, she's the Hoist Gracie. The game evolved. She didn't. And then, you got, who else did she beat? Raquel Pennington by split decision, and there's one more.
Betchy Correa.
And Betch Correa. So when we really look at those wins, and this is just a name fight. Holly's got a big name. I think Amanda's honestly going to handle her quite easily. I think they're on two completely different calibers of fighters. I think Holly just has that name value. I feel like Holly, and Cyborg. Sure, she lost to Cyborg. But even in that fight, Cyborg was looking really sloppy in that fight, to be honest, making a lot of mistakes. And Holly just backed up too much and wasn't able to capitalize. And, you go to the Jermaine Durandamy fight. Jermaine Durandamy's outboxing her, you know what I'm saying? Stuffing her takedowns. And, Holly won maybe the last round, just because Jermaine had already had the fight sealed up. But, Holly's just... what would I compare it to? Like a Gustafsson, just...
It was fun. Except she touched gold.
You know what I'm saying? Or like a... I just think that this is more of a name fight for Amanda to finally get the last Frankie Edgar type of fight, to get that last big name on your resume. She beat Misha, she beat Randa, she beat Jermaine, she beat Cyborg, she beat Valentina. So this is the last big name to get on her resume, and I think she will. Amanda's better than her in the boxing. She's better than her in the Muay Thai, in the Jiu-Jitsu, in the wrestling, durability. I feel like Amanda's come a long way from the Katzengano days where she was mismanaging her energy, and it shows it's a great example of how a person with all these losses can turn into something special, man. I mean, the chick was out here getting finished by Sarah D'Elio and Alexis Davis and getting DDT'd by Katzengano, you know what I'm saying? And she stayed with it, and I got a lot of respect for her. She stayed with it, and she's developed into a champion, and not only a champion, a champ. So I think Nunes is going to roll here. I think that I wouldn't be shocked if she knocked her out. I feel like Holly is a little chinny. I feel like Nunes, she should come out here with the game plan of managing her cardio for 5 rounds, and I think she will. But, I think she's a better pointer than Holly, too. Look at her against Valentina. I thought I scored that fight 49-46 the second time. And, Holly was kind of, not Holly, but Amanda was kind of beating her at Valentina at her own game. She was standing right in that perfect range, and Valentina was trying to get her to come inside so she could hit her with that right hook and that spin and that spinning back fist. But Amanda was making too many good reads out there. She's a different caliber fighter. Better everywhere. Better in every aspect of the game. I think she comes out here and gets a late finish. I'm going to say Nunes defends her 135 belt, and I don't think she should retire, man. I feel like there's still some good fights out for it. If Valentina wants to catch some smoke again, she can. I'm sure they'd put that fight on again. Or you got the Aspens of the world coming up. Jermaine wants a rematch, but I feel like she should keep fighting. I don't want to see her retire.
Yeah, look, I love Amanda Nunes, and Dana White does too. Dana White has a picture of Amanda in his office, and I think that let's just set up our champ with the last former champion that she hasn't beat yet. Already beat all the other former champions. Now let's just continue that legacy. And basically, you saw that Cyborg versus Holm fight. It was, 2 old women having a sparring match. And then the very next fight, Cyborg gets stopped in under a minute. And I think a similar thing's going to happen here. It might not be a 50-second knockout, but look, Holly's going to try to run away and do her side kicks, try to make her tennis sounds, try to mix in a head kick. But the thing with Amanda is she don't chase. She cuts off that ring, and eventually, Holly's going to have to commit and step up, and when that happens, that'll be it. So I'm going Amanda Nunes via a vicious finish, whether it's a rear naked choke, whether it's a knockout, whether it's a 50-43, which is not a finish, but it's a destruction. I do think it's going to be a finish, though. I'm going Amanda Nunes because when these girls get hit by her, it's unlike anything they've ever felt in their lives. And for that reason, I got Amanda Nunes to win this fight decisively. Main event of the evening in the light heavyweight division, we got John Bones Jones. He's 25-0, and Thiago Santos is 21-6. Currently, they got John Jones minus 690. The comeback on Thiago Santos is plus 495. Well, Shaq, at this point, it's not really about, who's got the better skills or this or that, because we kind of know John Jones is more skilled than everyone he's been fighting. At this point, it's like, can you catch the guy when he's not focused? Is Thiago gonna get this upset that we see, once every few years, that Matt Serra GSP, that Barao TJ, just one of those huge upsets in the sport. Is this gonna be that moment?
Yeah, it's going to be a good fight. Thiago Santos come a long way, man. This guy's had to make it to a title fight from where I remember he was a few years ago, losing to Uriah Hall, Cesar Mutanch, Eric Spicely, Branch.
Okay.
The guy's come a long way. And, he was depleting himself. He moved up to 205, got on this nice little win streak, and he earned himself a title fight, I feel like Thiago and these new guys kind of represent the newer 205 division, the Ratchixes, the Walkers, the Lord Mikals, there's new blood at 205, this ain't Glover Teixeira and Rashad Evans and Gustav. Matter of fact, I told you before John fought Anthony Smith, I sat here and told you guys that fucking Gustafsson was an easy opponent. Gustafsson ain't in it anymore. That Anthony would make it 5 rounds. And Anthony respected John too much. He kept calling him. Anthony was trying to be his friend. I don't know what Anthony still was, but Anthony doesn't really possess that one punch KO. He's a slow cook guy. He stood back and he let John do his thing. John's last two fights, he's just coming out here and he's pointing these guys up, man. Gustafsson, he did finish. He took him down, but like I said, Gustafsson. I picked Anthony Smith to go out there and break him in his hometown, and that's exactly what happened. So feel like I had a good read on Gustafsson. I feel like that was a tune-up fight for John. The Anthony Smith fight, kind of a little of the same thing. Anthony went in there with a bad mindset. But, this Maheda fight, it's just more danger in terms of getting knocked out stiff. Maheda's got the tied for the second most knockouts in the history of the company. Maheda's been looking good at 205, man. The Eric fight, it was kind of sloppy. The Manuel fight as well. But the Blachowicz fight, it seems like progressively he's getting better. Seems like he's getting more confidence. He's achieving new levels at 205, so I definitely think this is the weight class for him. We know John's the better fighter, but I look at things from a betting perspective, and I would never fade Thiago Santos at minus 700 or anything like that. I'd be fucking having a panic attack. You know what I'm saying?
That morning.
I'd be fucking sweating my ass off, especially against a motherfucker that hits like that. And with the second most knockouts it was going to end up with the most knockouts in the history of the company when it's all said and done. John, from what I'm hearing is, he's saying Maheda's muscles are going to play against him, and, he's pretty much banking on that Maheda's going to gas out and then he's going to take over in the late rounds. And it's probably gonna happen. But if you bank on something like that, next thing you know, you're knocked stiff. And Maheda only needs one. So from a betting perspective, it's definitely Maheda or a pass. I would never, like I said, never play. I would never go against Maheda at that type of line. Maheda's got no pressure. plus 500 for a guy that if he can clip behind, I don't give a fuck who it is. If he can clip behind the ears on anyone, they could be knocked out stiff. And I'm not saying that John's getting kind of complacent, but I do think he's getting really comfortable, man. I think that, like I said, I think his loss will be coming shortly. If it's not on Saturday, it's coming to Walker or Ratchik or one of these guys. Or if he goes up to heavyweight and fights my boy Francis. But, that doesn't really seem like something he wants to do. It seems like he wants to stay at 205. But he's the best, man. He's great everywhere. There's not too many holes in his. The only hole I would say that he kind of has is boxing. But, he breaks guys before the fight. The Cormier fight, I think Cormier's a great fighter. But I'll tell you why I think Maheda might be a little bit more of a threat. Because I feel like Cormier... like I put emphasis on it all the time. Anytime you see these guys putting these big emotions into the fight where they're talking all this shit and, they're, Cormier, you think I'm just going to let you kill me, John? You think I'm just going to let that? They've already fought at a face-off before. And, I just think Cormier, firstly, Cormier makes a lot of mistakes in his striking. He's a great fighter, but Cormier's chin is wide open. The guy...
Thiago got knocked out by Branch.
Yeah, when he fought with his hands down. But I'm just saying, on the given day, if you're fighting with added emotions, if you're fighting with, all these extra things that you don't need, you tend to go out there and make mistakes, and that's exactly what Cormier did. I feel like Maheda's got the calf kicks to possibly threaten John, the feints and the feints, and he can possibly land something upstairs. But, of course, I'm going to go with the GOAT, John Jones, just because he is the best fighter. He's never lost. But betting perspective, Thiago or pass.
Yeah, what's interesting to me about this fight, I know a lot of people think that Thiago's best chance is to land that one big punch. For me, actually, his best chance is not to bum rush a guy like Jones. His best chance for me is to go out there and systematically try to use a leg kicking game, because one thing about Jones, in terms of his physique, very skinny legs, and after every single fight he's in, even when he dominates these guys, he's always in a wheelchair, he's always on crutches, because, I'm not calling a athletic freak brittle, because that's not the case at all, but he definitely wears his damage after his fights. And with Thiago Maheda Santos, look, I think if he goes in there and bum rushes a guy like John Jones, he's going to get double legged and put on his back, and the fight will be over shortly after that's the case. But what I think he's got to do here is I think he's got to be patient, start to chop down that tree. That's what you got to do here, Maheda. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, because John Jones, his fight IQ is through the roof. He might know how to check kicks, but man, if Maheda can get off on 4 or 5 very hard calf kicks, all of a sudden it doesn't matter how smart you are, it doesn't matter how tough you are, you start walking, you're a little bit like you can't move anymore, and then you start to lose confidence in your own weapons. So that's how I think Maheda's got to get it done. And if he can do that, then holy shit, like if he starts getting off on 6 to 10 calf kicks, I might look at Shaq and be like, dude, like, it might happen. But the thing is, John Jones has to be addressing that. We can talk about his physical attributes, his skill set because he's well-rounded as fuck. He's good everywhere. But, man, what about the mentality? Just his confidence is A1, and his fight IQ is unlike anything I've ever seen. John Jones can make the adjustments on the fly in a fight, and that's what separates him from everyone else, in addition to having the longest reach in the history of the sport, in addition to, being just the biggest light heavyweight ever and all those things. Dude, his skill set, his mindset is A1. So don't get chopped down with calf kicks and you win this fight. I'm going with John Jones. I think he takes down Maheda Santos in either ground and pound TKOs or finds his back and submits him. So I do think that Thiago's looked the best he's ever looked at 205. The 20 pounds made a huge difference. That performance against Blachowicz was amazing. And even his highlights throughout the way. Even at 85s against Jack Hermanson, all the things he's done. The guy's amazing. He beat Anthony Smith, or as Thiago likes to say, or as my Brazilian brothers like to say, Anthony Smith. You know what I'm saying? He beat him. So he beat a lot of guys. He's awesome. And now it's time to fight the GOAT, the best of all time. And I don't think he's the guy. I think the guy is Johnny Walker. I think you have to be as big as John Jones physically, and if not bigger, Johnny Walker's 6'7". I think he's the guy. But much respect to Thiago Maheda. It's going to be awesome. What's that?
Johnny
He's 6'7".
Type it in right now.
Johnny's 6'7", by the way. It says 6'5" on tab.
Maurice Green's 6'7".
Maurice Green would get knocked the fuck out by Johnny Walker. But look, you need a guy like Johnny Walker who's taller than John Jones and more physical than him. Maybe even this kid Rockhold. He's really good too. I do not think it's going to be Thiago Maheda Santos. But I wish him all the luck in the world because I'd love to see a big upset. John Jones is going to win this fight, in my opinion. Now we got to hit up Kyle Marley for the Big Marley Minute. And joining us now on the Big Marley Minute is Big Marley himself. Kyle, it's International Fight Week this Saturday night. How's it going, my man?
Good, man. I'm headed out to Vegas tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to make some money out there. Hopefully party with the fighters afterwards, since I'll have a lot of money to blow thanks to them. And there's $100,000 up top on DraftKings, so you better believe I will be chasing that.
Man, the entire card is stacked, and let's get right down to business, man, because main event of the evening, you got the GOAT, John Jones. He's taking on Thiago Santos, and, man, I'll tell you what, Thiago's always been a killer, but ever since he moved up, he's been looking, I'd say he's been looking the best he's ever looked. Does he have what it takes to dethrone the pound-for-pound king, John Jones?
I think he has what it takes, which is going to be a haymaker. I think the only way John Jones is going to lose to anybody that's around right now is going to be by knockout. I just don't see how somebody beats him over the course of 25 minutes. So Santos has as good a shot as anybody, I guess, at 205, but I don't think it's much of a shot. John Jones is the greatest we've ever seen. I think he's going to bully him on the feet, and as long as he can avoid that big head kick or haymaker counter punch, then I think he's going to dominate this fight. And he should look to take it to the ground where it's not going to be any danger. And I think he'll be able to finish eventually with ground and pound. So I like him a lot. He's my favorite play on the slate, but he is the most expensive. So affording him is going to be the real issue. He's going to have to outscore everybody if it's going to win me $100K. So I think we can get away from this fight. If you think John Jones is going to win and not finish, score 90 points or so, then you can fade him because that's not going to win you 100,000. There are people that are priced below him that will score more than 90. So he's going to be the most popular guy on the whole slate. So it kind of makes sense to get away from him a little bit if you're making just a few lineups chasing that 100K because you want to make yourself different from the field. But I am picking Jones. I am picking him to finish, and I think he will score highly, so I'll have a good bit of him. But if Santos wins, he is going to for sure be on the nuts because it's going to be a knockout. So I won't fully fade him. I'll have a couple hedge lineups with Santos, but I'll have 150 lineups in there, so that's the only reason I'll be using them. If I was making like 20 or less, I'd probably just fade the fight or go Jones.
From a DraftKings perspective, are you at all stacking this fight or using Santos just for the sole fact that this card does have a lot of big favorites, Kyle? I know you know that. I know we've talked about that. And you got a guy like Thiago Santos at 6,600. If he pulls off the massive upset or even goes out there and lands a couple leg kicks, do you think he could be a good piece in your lineup to afford some of those big favorites?
Yeah, I'm not against the stack and cash because he is so cheap and he helps you get up to the other favorites that you're trying to get to. So I'm totally okay with the stack this week. And I also like it kind of as a hedge in case Santos does win, it gives me a little bit extra because I have a lot of money in cash games as well. So I feel like I would lock up cash games if Santos did win. So it's a nice little hedge there. And I do think this fight's going to get a minimum of 100 total points. So I'm fine with stacking it in cash, and I might actually do that myself.
So co-main event of the evening, you got the women's GOAT, Amanda Nunes. I mean, we're talking wins over Cyborg, Valentina, Jermaine Durandamy, Misha, Randa, and now potentially Holly Holm on Saturday night. So the question here is, do you think Holly's going to be able to run away enough for Amanda not to score high enough to cover that 9100, or do you think Amanda's going to be able to cut off that cage, get Holly Holm out of there, and cover that salary?
That's the worry. I mean, Holly Holm does not have the greatest style for DraftKings, and that's for most of her opponents as well. But I think the aggressiveness of Nunes can definitely counteract that style. And I think Nunes' best path to victory would be to go to the floor as well. She should dominate on the ground. So if she could do that, she could definitely score highly. But if this is going to be a 5-round striking match, there's a good chance she doesn't end up on that lineup because Holly Holm will be running around, like you said. So again, we can fade this. These two champions are going to gain a ton of field exposure. So if you want to fade both championship fights, you're going to be making yourself contrarian in just doing that, no matter what your other 6 fighters are. That'll make you different. So I'm not against fading it, but I do like Nunes here again. And I think she's going to finish. I think both champs should finish on the ground. I got John Jones with ground and pound and Nunes with a submission. And this is not a fight I would stack, even though it's 5 rounds, just Holly Holm style. You can't stack her fights. And if I have any lineups with her at all for GPPs, it'll be purely hedge purposes.
So, man, in the welterweight division, Askren's taking on Masvidal. Unbelievable fight. I mean, it's pretty simple here, man. Is Ben Askren going to grind him out or not?
It is simple, but I don't know. It's the most intriguing fight on the card, I feel like. I can't wait for it. I think Ben Askren is probably going to grind him out because he's not going to want to stand at all. Like, he's not going to spend any amount of time striking with Masvidal. He's going to be chain wrestling until he gets the fight to the ground. And if Masvidal gets back up, he's going to be trying to get it back down to the ground again. So I think it's knockout or bust for Masvidal. And we saw in his last fight that he could definitely do that. So, I mean, I do like Masvidal because there's not a lot of dogs to like on this card, and if he gets the knockout, he's got a good shot of winning that $100,000. So I won't be fading him at all, but I am picking Askren here, and I think he's going to win a wrestling-based decision with probably 5 or 6 more takedowns.
So he's predicting 100+ points.
I don't know about that. I mean, 6 takedowns at 5 apiece, that's 30. You get the win bonus at 30. He would have to do a lot of ground strikes, which I don't know how many of his ground strikes would be significant. So I don't know if he's getting over 100, but I do think he's going to be around, 10, 11x.
So Rockhold is making his light heavyweight debut against Jan Blachowicz. And we've seen a lot of these guys, they go up in weight, they look a lot better. But this isn't just 10 or 15 pounds, Kyle. This is 20 pounds. So are you expecting a brand new man here in Luke Rockhold?
I don't know, man. I think it kind of depends on how much damage Joel really did to him, but I do think that 20 extra pounds should help his chin out just in general. And I think he's just a much better fighter in this matchup as well. So it's going to come down to if Blachowicz can test that chin or if he can get takedowns and stay out of trouble on the ground. I just think Rockhold's better everywhere here. And he was my free bet of the week. I took him for 1 unit at -175. And now it's moved up a little bit. I think the line's right now, and he's sitting at -235. So that's where I think it should have been earlier in the week. And I like him a good bit to get the win here. And he hasn't scored less than 90 points in any of his wins so far. So I definitely like him at 8,400 here. But the thing I like most about this fight in general is it is the mid-range fight. We have no $8,000 or $8,200 fighters this week. It's $8,400 Rockhold or $7,800 Blachowicz. So I'll probably be targeting this fight pretty heavily since it's right there in the middle, and it kind of almost forces this fight into a lot of my lineups. So I'll definitely be heavier on Rockhold, but you got to have some Blachowicz in case, Rockhold's chin is completely toast.
Would you say Blachowicz is KO or bust in this spot? And the reason why that's kind of a funny question is because Blachowicz hasn't exactly been known for knocking people out, but I just have a really hard time seeing him out hustle Luke to a decision here.
Yeah, I would say it is KO or bust, and he isn't a knockout type of guy. So, yeah, I think he has a tough night ahead of him. So I think he's really got to rely on Rockhold's chin just not being strong enough to take any 205ers punches.
So, man, last but not least, kicking off the main card, Michael Chiesa versus Diego Sanchez. And what's interesting about this fight to me, Kyle, is that obviously no one's ever submitted Diego Sanchez before. He doesn't often get dominated on the mat, but the area that many have criticized him in is his chin. And on the flip side, Michael Chiesa isn't known for his striking, but when he moved up to 170 pounds, he fought Condit. His striking looked a lot better than it did in that Perez fight. So the question here is, do you think Chiesa plays it like normal Chiesa and tries to get Diego down to the mat, or do you think he actually turns the tables and tries to keep the standing and potentially goes out there and knocks out the legend Diego Sanchez?
I think he probably tries to get it to the mat. He's the first to submit Diego. I think that would be a nice accomplishment for him. And I think he can maybe pull it off. But like you said, man, maybe he can go out there and get a knockout too. He's not a knockout type of fighter at all, but maybe Sanchez is the guy to get it against. He looks great against Condit, so maybe this new weight class is his home. I think he is going to be the more dominant fighter. But of all the people we've talked about, I'd say Sanchez is my favorite of these underdogs because, Chiesa at 9,200, I would much rather pay $100 less and get Nunes. So at 7,000, Diego, he can definitely make this fight close. Like I said, he's never been submitted. So if Chiesa can't submit him, can't knock him out, then Diego could make this a brawl, and judges like him sometimes. So if he stole a split decision here, it wouldn't completely shock me. And on a card, we're really hurting to find underdogs. I'm not against going with some Sanchez. So he's my preferred play of the two, even though I am picking him to lose the fight. I think Chiesa is going to be too much for him and probably get a 30-27 decision.
Well, that's why you are the DraftKings guy for Half the Battle. Kyle Marley is going down this Saturday in Vegas. You will be there. The fans can follow you at Big Marley 3, and they can buy your bets and your write-ups at bestfightpicks.com.
That's right, bro. We got a max bet this week going hard, and I feel real good about profiting. So hit those bets up and then use that money to keep buying them. I think I'll pay off yearlies this week. So if you guys want to get on that deal, let's profit together.
Kyle Marley has a max bet at bestfightpicks.com. Like you just heard, Kyle Marley, let's get it, my man, and we'll speak soon.
All right, man. Good luck. Take care.
Thank you very much, Kyle Marley. Hope you enjoy Vegas. Now, Shaq, we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. What is the fight to watch for UFC 239?
My fight to watch is going to be the main event, Jon Jones versus Thiago Santos. Look, Jon Jones, if he keeps on this streak, I want to see him get challenged. I want to see him, these Ratchiks and these Johnny Walkers, they're still a bit of ways away from getting that title shot. They're still a couple wins away. So, I want to see how he performs in this fight, the third one of this active streak that he's on right now. I feel like it's the most dangerous guy he's fought in a while. That's my fight to watch. I want to see how he performs.
Look, my fight to watch is going to be Ben Askren versus Jorge Masvidal. There's a chance it's a boring fight, but the reason it's my fight to watch is because you got a very well-rounded guy in Jorge Masvidal who's a vet, who's very exciting, taking on a one-dimensional guy who's so amazing at that one dimension in Ben Askren that I just really am so intrigued by this fight. If somehow Ben can't get those takedowns, he's about to get busted up. But if Jorge's on his back, I'm curious if he can get back up. All that training he's been doing with Colby. I'm so intrigued. Plus all the talk. Jorge saying he wants to end his bloodline. Ben Askren being like, well, that's kind of funny because I already have 3 kids. They've been talking a lot of shit to each other. I really enjoy it.
Back when you were fighting in Kimbo's backyard for $20.
You know what I'm saying? So Ben Askren versus Jorge Masvidal is my fight to watch. Well, Shaq, who is your fighter to watch for UFC 239?
My fighter to watch is going to be Michael Chiesa. At one point in time, this guy was supposed to be one of the futures of the lightweight division. I like the move that he made in going to 170. Some guys got to know when it's time to go up. He made the right move. I think it's going to pay off. I think he's going to see a longer extended career at 170, and I'm expecting a good performance here against Diego Sanchez.
Yeah, look, my fighter to watch is Arnold Allen. This is the biggest opportunity of his career. He's only been fighting up-and-comers in the featherweight division. Now he gets to fight a legend of the sport, a former champion in Strikeforce, a guy in Gilbert Melendez who many years ago people were saying might have been the #1 lightweight. Turned out not to be the case, but he's still a legend of the sport. For Arnold Allen to come out here and get this win, it would only elevate his career to that next level, get him that signature win. So for that reason, Arnold Allen is my fighter to watch. Well, Shaq, we did it. It's going down this Saturday. UFC 239 International Fight Week. The GOAT Jones, the GOAT Nunes, both defending their belts. I cannot wait. They can follow our bets at bestfightpicks.com. Been killing it all year. Shaq, make sure you guys...
I'm on a serious run right now. Meatball Molly a couple weeks ago. Henry Cejudo, Triple C. Francis last week. I mean, I'm looking to continue with this for UFC 239. So, I mean, use code Shaq for 10% off my personal picks. And I'm looking to have a few plays for UFC 239. And I'm looking to get the win as well.
Yes, sir. Those plays you just heard, Molly McCann plus 245, Henry Cejudo plus 140, plus 145. Those are the kind of bets you can expect with Shaq's individual package. And for myself, obviously, 34% ROI on the year. Aside from Shaq, I think I got the best ROI out of anyone in 2019. So all I got to say is bestfightpicks.com. Let's get it. Subscribe to Half the Battle on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure you hook up those 5-star reviews on iTunes. Also, Inner Tops have highly competitive MMA lines and a $200 or Euro sign-up bonus. Click the link in the description right now. Follow me at Best Fight Picks. Follow Shaq at MMA Genius 05. And once again, make sure you tail our bets at bestfightpicks.com. Hope you guys enjoy the fights. Happy 4th of July. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.